Okay, in this video we're going to look at shoulder stand progressions on stable surfaces, either on a box or parallettes. And we're going to try and do this from either a tuck or a full L sit. The first progression is going to be quite simply looking at getting time and detention in the shoulder stand, and we'll do this in a tuck position. So it might be a little bit more of a strength drill on the shoulders because of the tucked legs and the underbalance, but it means the center of mass will be a lot lower, so there'll be a lot less volatility with regards to the balance. Talking of balance, if we're using boxes, it's very important to use a nice wide stable base of support, which means spreading the fingers on the box. For me, I prefer to slightly turn my hands out, so rather than going fingers forward, I go more towards 30, even maybe 45 degrees, just to help squeeze my elbows in and keep all of this force coming into my center. I then want to make sure that the width between my boxes is narrow enough so I can get my hands close to me, but wide enough so I can come between the boxes. Something very simple that we can do here, we try and look for the width somewhere close to fingertips to elbow. It will differ between person to person, but for me, this works very well. From here, I place my hands down, regarding the hands I push in, scapula, I then drive down, and I'm looking to pull everything into my center, including my knees. From here, what I want to think about is leveraging my head forwards to allow my hips to rise. Then I try and get my center above my hands, drop my head down and forwards, and holding for the given time and attention. To come out, I can either come back the way I came, or I can simply drop my legs back as if coming down from the hands. The first progression therefore is something like time and detention in the shoulder stand, really trying to simplify moving parts. The more moving parts in this position, the harder it's going to be to balance, and especially take this up towards the gymnastic rings. What that means is, when I'm entering this tuck position in the shoulder stand, I want to use this very simple leverage. I want my head to drop down to allow my heavy hips and legs to rise upwards. The only joint that's really moving, therefore, is the elbow joint. The next progression would then be to start to look at moving dynamically between the tuck L sit and the tuck shoulder stand, just so we get a bit more time and attention and a bit more of the patterning and the strength in the patterning. So what that means is you have a lot more time in the straight arm support position, leaning forward into the inversion, pausing for a few seconds to show control, and then once again returning down and repeating. So we get a lot more strength through a range of motion here. It looks something like this. Again, keep it simple. The less moving parts, the better. And so on for the reps and sets provided. The next progression would then be looking at time and detention in the fully open position. For this one again, we're looking at initially not working reps, but simple long holds. This is like an acclimatization phase to the new position. So it's going to feel a bit easier on the shoulders because the leverage is different now. So rather than the legs being on the underbalance side, they're now directly above you. So it's even more imperative to use the fingers, especially if you're on boxes or a stable surface, to stop the overbalance, which means falling on your back. If you're really nervous of doing this, what you can do is place boxes with a wall in front. That means worst case, if you do fall on towards your back, you can split the legs, catch yourself on the wall, come back down the way you came. Another way to manage this is just to sit a bit on the underside. So rather than your body being directly vertical, you'll be more towards 25-30 degrees. The position looks something like this. The same cues as before. The less moving parts, the better. Obviously, if we're elongating the legs upwards, it makes sense to then start from an elongated L sit position. The key for this one is to elongate the center of mass up and over your body before you try and bring the legs out. As you see there, I elongate to get my hips over me, and I also reverse in the same manner. So whereas I did hips, then legs on the way up, I then do legs, hips on the way down. This will allow you to compress nice and deeply and really work to keep your center as much above you as possible. The final progression here would then be to move from the L sit to the full shoulder stand and back for reps in a dynamic manner to show control and dynamic stability before we then move towards the gymnastic rings. For this, I really encourage you to move away from the wall to really test that you can support yourself in the overbalanced position. Yes, it's slightly different to the rings because you're balancing from the hand like you would in a handstand, as opposed to balancing from the ribs. But the principle remains the same. We're looking at balancing from the base of support, so the hands, either on the rings or the box, as opposed to the body. If you're balancing from the body and up the chain, things are not going to go well when you move to the rings. Hopefully, there looks something like this. I'm getting tired now. There is 4 progressions towards the L sit to shoulder stand.